The school felt strange. Long hallways with flickering lights, paint peeling near the windows. The third floor, especially, had an odd chill, even in the middle of summer. Yui was new. She didn't believe in ghost stories, but one girl dared her to go to the third floor girls' bathroom, the third stall, knock 3 times and say, "Are you there, Hanako-san?" The others giggled and said, "If you're lucky, she just answers. If you're not," well, they didn't finish the sentence, but Yui could imagine what would happen if she refused. So she went to the third floor. She walked down the long hallway until she saw the bathroom at the end. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the door and stepped inside. There were 3 stalls in a row. No one was there. Yui hesitated for a moment before knocking once, then twice, then 3 times. Is anyone there?" she called out. A moment of silence. Then a voice answered, "Who's there?" Startled, Yui jumped back. "Hanako-san," she stammered. The stall door slid open and a girl emerged. She had long black hair and wore a white sailor uniform like the other students. But her face was pale and her eyes were hollow. Before Yui could scream, the girl pressed a finger to her lips. She whispered. Then she beckoned with her finger for Yui to follow her. Yui didn't want to, but she couldn't help herself. Curiosity overwhelmed her fear. As they walked down the hallway, the girl turned to Yui and introduced herself. "I'm Hanako," she said with a sweet smile. Yui, still trembling, managed to reply, "I'm Yui." Hanako's smile widened. "So nice to meet you, Yui," she said. "Let's become friends." Yui nodded dumbly. She couldn't speak. Hanako took her hand. It was icy cold. And then she led her into a classroom. It was empty, dark, and dusty. Yui suddenly remembered what the other girls had said about Hanako. They didn't actually answer when she called them. They only responded to those who had something to confess. Was that why Hanako had brought her here? To confess her sins? That's what they say. The third floor is cursed. You can't leave once you enter. You have to confess your sins to the ghost. What sins? Yui racked her brain trying to remember. Had she done anything wrong? Then she noticed a small box in the corner. Inside, she found a diary filled with neat handwriting. It told the story of a girl named Hanako who died in a fire. But why did she die? Yui continued reading. Hanako had loved a boy who was going to confess to her, but he never did. When he rejected her confession, she set him and their school ablaze, burning to death with him. So she was a victim of a tragic love. Yui closed the diary. She felt sorry for Hanako, but she also felt scared. Did Hanako want her to confess her love to someone? She didn't understand. Suddenly, Hanako appeared beside her. "Do you like someone?" she asked softly. Yui blushed and nodded. Hanako smiled. "Then let me help you." Before Yui could respond, Hanako pressed her hand against the diary, causing it to burst into flames. Yui screamed, but Hanako just kept smiling. "Now we have something in common," she said, her voice echoing through the room. "You and I both love him." The flames grew stronger, reaching towards Yui. She backed away, bumping into a chair. She cried out as the fire closed in, but then she noticed something. The flames weren't hot. In fact, they felt cool to the touch. As she reached out to touch them, Hanako appeared in front of her, blocking her from the flames. "Don't come any closer," Hanako warned, but Yu wasn't afraid anymore. She knew Hanako wouldn't hurt her. She understood now. Hanako wanted her to replace her. A single tear rolled down Yu's cheek as she looked at the ghostly figure in front of her. The flames flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Yui took a deep breath and stepped forward. The sun was setting as Yui climbed the creaking stairs. Her shoes echoed in the empty hallway. A sign on the bathroom door read, "Out of order, do not enter." She hesitated, then pushed it open. Inside, cold tiles, cracked mirrors, faint smell of mold, and silence. She turned on the tap. The sound was like nails on a chalkboard. Splash, splash. She splashed water on her face. The icy water brought back memories, memories she'd locked away for years, memories of this place, memories of him. He used to stand right where she was, his hair always falling into his eyes, always smiling. He'd lean against the counter, wrap his arms around her, burying his face in her hair. The scent of Lilith, his favorite, would linger around him. Sometimes he would sing while washing his hands, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in her bones. Those were good times. Times she didn't want to remember, because the more she remembered, the more she felt, and feeling meant pain. Pain she couldn't bear. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass, staring at her reflection. Who was she? A shell of her former self? Her eyes, once bright with laughter, now held a haunting emptiness. Years of therapy had carved tiny fissures in her heart, fissures that ached when she thought about him, about them. She squeezed the bridge of her nose, trying to steady her breathing. The bathroom, with its peeling paint and grimy mirror, was all that remained of her past. The town had changed, grown, but this place, it was stuck in time, a mausoleum of memories. A sudden crash from the floor above made her jump. The old house groaned, settling in its sleep. Or was it something else? Someone else? A shiver raced down her spine. She wasn't alone. She could feel his presence here, in the floorboards, in the walls, in the very air she breathed. She reached out, touching the scratched surface of the counter, as if seeking solace in the roughness of it. How long had it been since she'd returned here? 5 years? 10? Time had become a blurry canvas, blurring the edges of her past. A gentle breeze snaked through the window, ruffling the strands of her hair that had escaped her braid. It smelled like rain and earth, like life. Outside, the world was turning, living, breathing, moving on without her. But she was here, trapped in the amber of yesterday. She closed her eyes, willing the panic to recede, in and out, breathe. He was gone. He'd been gone for a long time. She told herself this, but the echo of his laughter still resonated in her ears. The floorboard above creaked again, louder this time. Was she imagining things, or was someone really up there? She strained to listen, her heart hammering against her ribs. Footsteps. Someone was walking above her, heavy footsteps. She backed away, bumping into the cold, hard wall. Her breath hitched in her throat. What was she doing here? She needed to leave, to get away from the ghosts that haunted these halls, the ghost that whispered his name. As she turned to flee, a glint of movement caught her eye. On the counter, her reflection stared back, distorted and grotesque, like a funhouse mirror image. She wasn't in the bathroom. She was in the mirror, behind her. And then she saw it. In the palm of her hand, a tiny spider scuttled, making its way towards her. Its 8 beady eyes glittered like malevolent stars in the grimy mirror. It paused, sensing her fear, and let out a thin, reedy hiss. She screamed, a primal sound that tore through the silence of the room, echoing his name, his sweet, beautiful name. And as the spider lunged, she woke up. The school's old wooden buildings creaked in the wind, their gables like gnarled fingers reaching toward the stormy sky. The 3rd bell had just rung, signaling the start of lunch break. But the schoolyard was deserted, the swing swaying eerily in the breeze, the slide a lonely metal serpent curling down the school's gables. Only one figure braved the weather, a lone girl with long flowing hair making her way toward the 3rd stall in the row of dark school toilets. She walked slowly, her footsteps echoing in the cavernous space between the buildings. Her hand trembled slightly as she raised it and knocked. Knock. The sound reverberated off the grimy tiles, swallowed by the oppressive silence that always seemed to linger around the 3rd stall. Are you there, Hanako-san? She whispered, her voice catching in her throat. Silence. Then, hesitantly, she knocked again. Knock. This time, the sound was answered by another knock from the other side. Her heart skipped a beat. She took a step back, her eyes wide with surprise. I'm just kidding, she whispered, her voice trembling. It's just a game. The stall creaked open, just a crack. From the shadowed gap, something moved. It was too dark to make out any details, but she could feel something watching her, its gaze like a physical presence pinning her in place. The air grew colder, the temperature plummeting as if an ice cube had been dropped into her stomach. Then a voice, soft yet somehow resonant, echoed from the darkness. Who's there? The voice sent a shiver down her spine. It wasn't a mean or angry sound, more like a curious hum from some unseen observer. Taking a deep breath, she forced herself to reply, "It's me." Another sound, this time a sigh, like air escaping from a punctured balloon. The toilet seat slammed shut, followed by the click of the door latch. A moment stretched into an eternity before the door opened once more. She could see his face now, pale and gaunt under the dim light filtering through the window above. His eyes were pools of inky black, bottomless pits that seemed to absorb the little light that dared to touch them. His hair was a mess of tangled black strands falling over his forehead, hiding his eyes. He wore the standard school uniform, white shirt, black blazer, gray trousers, but it hung loosely on his emaciated frame. But what truly stole her breath away was not his appearance, but the aura that surrounded him, a palpable sadness that seeped into her bones, chilling her to the core. Despite the oppressive atmosphere, she couldn't help but feel a surge of sympathy for the boy. "Why are you here?" she asked softly, taking a hesitant step closer. He flinched at her approach, his eyes widening. For a moment, the only sound was the drumming of rain against the roof. Finally, he whispered, "I'm waiting for someone." Her heart ached at his words. Waiting. Was that all he'd been doing? Waiting in the darkness, hidden away from the world? She wanted to reach out, to offer comfort, but her hand froze in midair. She didn't know him, didn't know anything about him. And this place, this ghostly realm, felt like a chasm separating them. A sudden crash from the corridor startled her, and the boy flinched as well, pressing himself against the wall. The door to the stall was old and warped, and the wind must have pushed it open. The gap was wide enough for her to peer inside. She saw a faded yukata lying on the floor, a splash of color in the otherwise monochrome space. It was a beautiful pattern, but it looked old and worn. Her eyes met the boy's, and she saw understanding dawn in those bottomless black pits. He wasn't just waiting for someone. He was waiting for something tied to this place, to the school, to her. Their eyes locked, and she felt a jolt, a connection forming between them across the divide of the unknown. Before she could question it, the bell rang, sharp and clear, echoing through the empty school. The boy stiffened, his eyes losing focus as if a switch had been flipped. He mumbled, "It's time," and pushed himself away from the wall. He walked past her without a word, his gaze fixed on the door. She watched him go, his shoulders slumped, his steps heavy with the sadness that mirrored her own. When the door closed behind him, she was left alone in the echoing silence, the smell of damp wood and old paper thick in the air. The yukata lay on the floor, a silent witness to the boy's sorrow, and she knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that their paths were now intertwined. The wind howled like a hungry wolf, whipping my hair across my face as I sprinted through the school grounds. Behind me, the old school bell tolled, its mournful cry echoing the turmoil in my heart. Each gust of wind seemed to push me harder, urging me to flee, to escape. But from what? From whom? I dared not look back. I didn't need to. The image of that ghastly hand, pale and dripping blood, was seared into my mind. My breath hitched in my throat as I ran, my legs pumping, pushing me forward. But where could I go? Where could I hide? As I rounded a corner, I saw it, the one place I hadn't checked, the one place I knew I had to go. The old abandoned house at the edge of the property, its windows like vacant eyes staring into my soul. It loomed over me, a silent witness to my terror. Without hesitation, I dashed towards it, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. The rusty gate creaked open as if beckoning me inside, and I stepped through, collapsing against the rough bark of a nearby tree, gasping for breath. The moon was a sliver in the sky, offering little to the way of illumination. The wind tore through the skeletal branches of the trees, their leaves long gone, their limbs clawing at the fading light. Shadows danced around me, twisting and turning, taking on shapes of their own. Every creak of the old house, every sigh of the wind sent shivers down my spine. Then I heard it again, the voice from before, sweet and chilling. "I'm here." The voice whispered from the darkness. I froze. I couldn't see anyone, only the dim outline of a girl in a school uniform standing inside. The head was tilted downward, her hair hiding her face. Then suddenly, without warning, a pale hand shot out and gripped the edge of the door. Blood dripped from the fingers. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. The door didn't open further. The hand just stayed there, reaching out, waiting. My mind raced. Who was she? Why was she there? What did she want? Fear threatened to consume me, but I forced myself to stand my ground. I had to be brave, had to find an answer. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice trembling. The wind snatched my words away, and the girl remained silent. She didn't answer. She only continued to stare at me with those lifeless eyes, her hand still gripping the door. A sob caught in my throat. Was she trapped? Did she need my help? But why? Why was she covered in blood? The questions tumbled in my mind, but before I could ask them, the voice spoke again. This time it was closer, too close. "Do you want to play with me?" The voice asked, almost sweetly. I flinched. The voice was right beside me. I spun around, my eyes searching the shadows, but I saw nothing. Then I noticed the hand, the bloody hand, was no longer on the door. It was on my shoulder. I screamed, scrambling back, knocking over a nearby stone. It rolled towards the house, disappearing from sight. In the sudden lull, I could hear the girl's ragged breathing. She was close, so close. I could feel the darkness closing in around me, enveloping me in its cold embrace. And then, as quickly as it began, it vanished. The wind picked up again, swirling around me, carrying with it the scent of rain and something else, something metallic, something that smelled like blood. The old house groaned, its timbers twisting and turning as if in pain. The girl was here somewhere, I could feel it, but where? My eyes darted around, searching every dark corner, every creaking step. My heart hammered against my ribs, urging me to run, to hide, to do anything but stay still. But where could I go? Where could I hide? Suddenly, a floorboard creaked above me. Footsteps. Someone was coming down the stairs. My breath caught in my throat. I froze, hoping against hope that whatever was coming would pass me by unnoticed. But as the footsteps grew louder, I knew I couldn't stay hidden forever. The wind howled, mocking my terror as I took a shaky breath and stepped out of my hiding place. I didn't dare move, didn't dare make a sound. I just stood there and waited, hoping with all my might that whatever was coming would pass me by, but it didn't. The footsteps stopped. A pair of eyes, glowing like embers in the darkness, fixed on me. A smile, slow and cruel, spread across a pale face. And in a voice that was both silky smooth and chillingly cold, she whispered, "Found you." The figure in the black uniform continued to approach. Closer now, she could see his face, pale and gaunt with dark circles under his eyes. Was he carrying a weapon? Had he killed the others? Questions she didn't want the answers to. She needed to get away from him, away from this place. She bolted out of the bathroom, down the stairs, through the hallway. But when she passed a window, the reflection in the glass showed her running. And behind her, a figure in a black uniform was following her. Closer now, she could see his face, pale and gaunt with dark circles under his eyes. Was he carrying a weapon? Had he killed the others? Questions she didn't want the answers to. She needed to get away from him. Away from this place. Adrenaline surged through her veins, lending her speed and strength she didn't know she possessed. She flung open the door at the end of the hall and stumbled out into the night. The cool night air a stark contrast to the stifling atmosphere of the building. She didn't stop running until she reached the safety of her car. Bursting into tears, she fumbled with her keys, unlocking the car and throwing herself inside. She slammed the door and rolled up the windows, locking them. Then she started the engine and sped out of the parking lot. Behind her, the figure in the black uniform stood motionless, an ominous silhouette against the neon lights of the building. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He simply stood there watching her go. As she drove, the events of the night before came flooding back to her. The meeting, the conversation, the argument, the struggle. And then the blackout. Had he drugged her? Why was he following her? What did he want? She pulled over to the side of the road, needing a moment to collect herself. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that someone was out there following her every move. She looked over her shoulder, half expecting to see the black car that had been following her, but there was nothing behind her. Only the dark trees lining the road and the faint glow of the streetlights. Taking a deep breath, she tried to calm herself down. It was just a nightmare, she told herself. It wasn't real. But the fear still lingered, a cold, slithering thing that wrapped itself around her heart and squeezed tight. She started the engine and drove on, the fear driving her forward like a second, darker self. Where was she going? She didn't know. But she knew she couldn't stay in that place. Not anymore. As the sun began to rise, she finally found her way home, her body aching with exhaustion, her mind still racing. She had made it. She was safe now, or were they not? Scene 6. Home that night, Yui tried to sleep, but her bathroom door creaked open on its own. The light inside flickered, and from the third tile on the wall, she swore she heard, "Are you there, Yui-chan?" Yui screamed and scrambled back, knocking over her bedside table. The lamp hit the floor with a crash, plunging her room into darkness. Only the pale moonlight streaming in from the window illuminated the dust motes dancing in the air. She didn't hear anything after that, at least not at first. Then she began to make out the soft sound of footsteps near her bed. They were coming from the bathroom. Whoever or whatever was making them was careful not to make a sound, but it was too late. Yui had already started to cry. The doorknob turned, the door opened. Yui squeezed her eyes shut and buried her face in her pillow. She heard a sigh and the sound of fabric brushing against her sheets. Then a soft, feminine voice whispered, "It's okay, Yui-chan. I won't hurt you." Yui's eyes snapped open. In the dim moonlight, she saw the ghastly figure of a woman standing over her. The woman was beautiful, yet horrifying. Her long, straight black hair reached down to her ankles. Her skin was unnaturally pale, almost white. And her eyes, Yui could never forget those eyes. They were a bottomless pit of darkness. Who are you?" Yui stammered. The woman smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was a predatory smile, like that of a snake ready to strike. "You can call me Hanako-san," she said. "I'm here to take you with me." "Take me where?" Yui asked, her voice trembling. Hanako-san leaned closer. She was so close that Yui could see the blood-red kanji symbol tattooed behind her left ear. The symbol looked familiar for some reason. She couldn't place it. "We're going home," Hanako-san whispered. "My home?" She extended a finger and gently stroked Yui's cheek. It felt like ice-cold metal. Then everything went black. When Yui woke up, she found herself lying on a cold, hard surface. She was in the bathroom. The door was wide open and the light was off. She was alone. Yui got up and stumbled out of the bathroom. As she walked, she noticed a single white rose on the floor near the doorknob. Where did it come from? Who put it there? She continued on until she reached her bedroom. In the middle of the floor was a mirror. Yui stared at her reflection. What was that woman doing here? Why did she have that kanji tattoo? And most importantly, where was she now? Suddenly, the room began to spin. Yui gasped and fell to her knees. She pressed her forehead against the cold, hard floor. The last thing she remembered was that awful feeling of dread, of absolute terror. And then, nothing. When she woke up again, she was lying on the bathroom floor. The water was running. Blood-red petals were floating on the surface. And in the center of the tub sat a woman with long, straight black hair. Her skin was as white as snow. Her eyes were a bottomless pit of darkness. And on her left ear, Yui saw the telltale sign of a blood-colored kanji. The next day at school, there was a rumor circulating around the third stall. They say if you call Hanako-san in the third stall, she'll mark you. So when you go to the bathroom, wherever you go, a bathroom becomes hers. And the stalls start knocking on their own. As soon as school started, everyone was running to the bathroom. There were 100 empty seats in the classroom, but no one dared to call Hanako-san. Then our classroom's representative raised her hand. She wanted to ask for a leave. She said she wasn't feeling well. The teacher allowed her to go to the nurse's office, and everyone started to get suspicious. What if the representative was chosen by Hanako-san? What if she called Hanako-san so that she would mark her, and now she is going to the bathroom? A few minutes passed and the representative came back. Her face was pale and she said she wasn't feeling well. The teacher let her go back home. Everyone was whispering to each other. They were saying maybe she was chosen because she was the representative, but then someone spoke up. They said it wasn't the representative who called Hanako-san. It was me. Everyone turned their gazes towards me and I felt a cold sweat trickle down my back. I denied it, but they didn't believe me. The bell rang and everyone ran out of the classroom. I was left sitting at my seat and the teacher started writing something on the blackboard. When she turned around, she looked at me with an eerie smile. She said, "It's time for your punishment." I was scared, but I couldn't help but think it's just a rumor. Nothing's gonna happen. Then the teacher grabbed my hand and dragged me towards the bathroom. The other students were gathered around the third stall, but the teacher pulled me towards the second stall. She pushed me inside and closed the door. Suddenly, the walls started shaking and the stall started knocking on its own. Just like the rumor said, I started to panic. I was completely alone in this dark bathroom. I didn't know what to do. Then I heard a voice. It said, "So you're the one who called me." I was too scared to answer. The voice said, "I'm disappointed. You should have come to the third stall. It's much more fun here." I started crying. I didn't want to be punished. I didn't want to be in the second stall. I wanted to go home. Then I heard footsteps approaching the second stall. The person stopped right in front of it and knocked on the door. The stall opened and the person said, "Hey, are you okay?" I heard some weird noises coming from inside. I was too scared to speak. I just nodded my head. The person seemed suspicious. I think he knew what was happening. He probably knew about the rumor. He probably called Hanako-san too. The person stepped into the stall and the bathroom suddenly went dark. We couldn't see each other in the pitch black darkness, but I could hear his heartbeat. It was fast, just like mine, and then I felt something wet trickle down my cheek. Was it a tear or something else?